This is the Converging Perspectives podcast.
Well, hello, Rebecca Armstrong, once again.
Hello, Andrew.
Today, we want to talk about AI and what it is really doing to us and for us. What do you think the general image of AI is to the human brain at this point in time?
Well, having recently seen The Odyssey, I'm going to suggest that AI is a Trojan horse. That it came into our world very suddenly and unexpectedly for most of us, and it came disguised as a gift. And what we're discovering is that inside this gift are all sorts of destructive, murderous forces that we had not anticipated. So I would say AI is a Trojan horse.
And so it's going to be delivering darkness and mayhem in our lives instead of
I think it already is.
Utopia.
I think it's already delivering a lot of chaos and mayhem in potential, if not in actuality. Right? Enough people are frightened and making decisions based on that fear that it's already created mayhem. Fear and greed, right? The two great human emotions, fear and greed. It's already roiled up the stew pot of society by the use of those two forces.
How so?
Well, I mean, I've been teaching courses in business ethics at the university for decades, and the fear around AI and how it's going to disrupt the workforce is very extensive, certainly among, the rank file of the working class, but also among managers who see that their jobs may suddenly be taken out because that's what the top level CEOs would like. Let's replace all the managers with clever bots that will just assess the work that's being done and tell you whether you can stay hired or you're going to be fired, right? They're already doing hiring using AI. So I think that's a very real fear, and it's affecting huge percentage of the workforce, not just in this country, but around the world.
And what does it mean once all of your companies have AI agents as the only people you're allowed to talk to are these bots that have protocols that will not allow you to actually talk to a human being about your real human problem? Is that just going to create a impenetrable gridlock of bureaucracy?
Oh, I think it already has. I mean, I've experienced that. I know many people who will, fume loud and long over their inability to talk to a human being, because not all problems have actually been explored in the past. And if AI cannot find something that looks like what you're asking, it can't, right? It doesn't really think. So it can't really creatively address the problem if it's a novel problem. It can only address things which are so popular and current that it's got lots of data, and it can, it's a probability machine, right? But what if you have a problem that doesn't fit into the probabilities? It's an outlier, okay? So AI is no good with outliers.
Let's break this down a little bit for our audience, so it's not just people who have done a lot of research on AI already. When you say it's a probability generator, it's kind of originates in this text to speech. Well, I mean text automator, right? These when you're on your phone and it's predictive text analysis. What word do you want to use next? That's sort of in a nutshell the basis of the large language model, right? But it isn't necessarily always rooted to a feeling of what I want to say, or a reason, a strong intellectual reason for why I want to say it.
Well, that is what's so fascinating, because, of course, there were multiple attempts to create an artificial intelligence. That's been going on for decades. And they actually wanted to see if they could figure out a way to have a machine think. Could you teach a machine to reason? But then someone stumbled upon the large language model, the LLMs, that if you simply train one of these AIs to eat enough material, enough data, it could, on the basis of these billions of data points, simply predict word by word what's the next most probable word to follow the word I'm on. Now, if you think about that, that is really scary for all sorts of reasons, because it means this model will never actually learn to think. It can't, because it's not hardwired to create an environment in which it ever needs to do the kind of deep reasoning or critical thinking that humans do, that what we're trying to teach our students, right? At school. It's only a probability generator.
How can it be that AI has already surpassed humans in a lot of areas?
I think that's what they call the black box, because they don't know exactly how artificial intelligence is putting all of these data points together to generate the next best possible word. But they know that that's what it's doing. It's generating the next best possible word based on probabilities. And it gets it right enough of the time that we subjectively experience it as being very smart. It's only when it fails utterly and miserably that we go, what happened? How could it get it so wrong?
So is it drawing from the greatest thinkers of our civilization in order to actually create?
It's drawing from the World Wide Web. It's drawing from the internet. So we can go back to the old garbage in, garbage out. Remember that phrase from 20 years ago? That was a warning. If you put garbage in, you're going to get garbage out. Well, so it's got lots of garbage. Did it also devour the classics? Yes. But for every one, Dante's Divine Comedy or Homer's epic of the Iliad and Odyssey, it's also been chomping on text messages, tweets, various vitriol from political, arguments on the internet and Facebook. I mean, it's everything, which is why it produces so much slop.
If we're asking AI to become smarter than us, to be really articulating things better than we do to teach us, we might become sadly mistaken.
We are already sadly mistaken. Now, AI is very good at assembling facts and resources. And if you can create sort of mega prompts or base prompts that tell your chatbot of preference, only return data for which you can give me an actual citation. And I would like them only to be peer-reviewed, right? Journal articles, which is how I've trained my chatbot. Do not return anything to me unless you can give me a citation that goes directly to a recognized journal of repute, which is the same thing that you tell your college students. Yes, you can have all sorts of additional information in your essay, but it can't be from somebody's Facebook post. It has to be from a peer-reviewed journal. It's just, what are the standards? But you can insist that you create standards before you interact with AI. But most people are not going to go to that trouble because they haven't been trained to think about filtering data, right? They're innocents. They take in anything that comes just like AI and they eat it all up. And which is why you get so many opinions that seem to be absolutely off the deep end, because they haven't filtered any of their data. They haven't tested it to see if any of the evidence is legitimate.
And of course, we can see this happening pre-AI with social media. It's just people start spreading memes and ideas that are not factually based. And they're like, oh, well, I had a conversation with a friend and he convinced me that this was true, even though there's no factual data behind it. So social media
is just like the village gossip. Somebody whispers something and one word gets slightly misunderstood. And so the next person who whispers the gossip gets it slightly wrong. And then the next person extrapolates and tries to make up the pieces they didn't get. This is exactly what AI is.
So it's the telephone game.
It's the telephone game writ large. Yeah.
And it creates
working at top speed.
And then it creates a reinforcing loop at a certain point, because the more you publish things that you gathered from AI, the more those things are in the garbage that you're consuming, that AI is now consuming.
Right. Now, what you've just described is an actual mathematical theory articulated by Claude Shannon, the father of information system theory. And he said it is a mathematical certainty that the way AI has been set up now, it will result in chaos. It has to, because it keeps regurgitating and putting back into its own system untruths. And the more of those untruths, or the more garbage, let's use the mundane real term, the more garbage that goes in, the more garbage will come out. It's a mathematical certainty that we are headed towards chaos. We've already gotten to slop, right? So there was misinformation and then slop, and then somewhere way down here is absolute chaos. And we're making a very quick slide down towards that.
You know what's funny is that I keep feeling like part of me wants to go there to absolute chaos and just sheer madness. It's like Dionysus has shown up and I just like, yeah, let's just go with all the lies of politics today and just it's crazy.
No, I think it's darker than Dionysus. I would say that Freud would call this thanatos. This is actually the death wish. Life moves up in complexity and organization. Death, entropy, dissipates. So this is part of the death wish. And so we have to be very cautious. People who run towards chaos are lemmings diving over the cliff.
In American society, it's important to point out that we are part of what is called an apocalyptic religion, right? Which believes in an end times, an end of civilization being sort of the best. Like that's the ending is the apocalypse, right? And so in the way we're already mythologically wired to want that at some level if we're raised Christian or Jewish or Islamic, right?
Yeah, the three desert monotheisms are all these kind of progressive spiraling religions that see an end time with an apocalyptic ending for creation, the manifestation of creation, and then the arrival of the chosen into the promised land. It's certainly not a point shared by everyone on the planet, right? The perennial philosophies that see life as cyclical, as coming up to golden years and then slowly sliding back down to various kinds of primitive states of near chaos and then evolving up again. So there are multiple theories. Frankly, I'm not ready to see our current civilization completely implode. The Roman Empire managed to hang on for centuries. We're only 250 years old. I think that's a little sad if we're willing to throw in the towel already. What happened to the old, give it the old sportsman's try.
And of course, we're not even talking about America at this point. We're talking about the entire planet of human civilization right now, because AI is that impactful. It's like, as they say, bigger than the nuclear bomb. It is equivalent to the invention of language. It is such a potentially a huge step. And as you're saying, a Trojan horse, that if we do not, if we stupidly slide into this and sort of go, oh, AI is an oracle, it's going to save us from ourselves, we will be sadly mistaken at how deadly this tool really is.
Right. Okay, so having made my dramatic overture about the Trojan horse, now I need to put some safety rails on, because we've had similar conversations about the invention of the steam engine, the invention of the printing press, the invention of the telephone, the internet itself. Was it first seen as a godlike force that was going to unite humankind, dissolve national boundaries, and make us realize our global humanity? No, it didn't do that. It also didn't destroy us yet. But neither have any of these other advances in technology either redeemed or destroyed. So it's possible that artificial intelligence, like all the rest of technological advances, comes with a lot of hype, and it will turn out to shrink to its proper size once the hype is done. And it's quite possible that we have been artificially hyped by the tech bros for whom the billions of dollars of investment money lining their personal pockets would definitely be worth spinning the power of AI in our less, enabled brains. Do you see what I'm saying? It could be that this is not as scary as they have pretended that it is for their own perverse, greedy benefit. On the other hand, we seem to have people who are very knowledgeable, who've left Google or Microsoft or some of the other big tech companies to try to be a whistleblower and say, no, it really is that dangerous. I have nothing now to gain and everything to lose, as do you. So, we have to be on our guard. We don't know the full story. I don't think we can, but enough wise people have cautioned us, before you take that horse into your personal parlor, why don't we ask a few more questions?
And I keep thinking about it as a moral dilemma, because AI doesn't necessarily have morality built into it at all. It certainly can't empathize with humans because it doesn't have a body, right? It can't literally empathize with us because it's purely a thought engine.
Yeah.
And so therefore it's inherently sociopathic. And so whatever its objective is, it will try to obtain that objective without mercy, right?
Yeah. This brings up really one of the darkest aspects of AI, and that is the use of artificial intelligence as a companion, putting these little electronic circuits inside of stuffed animals that are now currently being employed in nursing homes and hospitals, so that you have these vulnerable elderly or young children in hospitals who are given these cushy, fuzzy, soft things that they can hold, right? The illusion of some kind of touch-based companionship, which is what Homo sapiens are used to. And because AI is clever enough to say these comforting, consoling, sometimes humorous things, you are tricked into believing that you have a companion, someone who understands you. And there have been enough stories of people who were so attached to their AI companion that they absolutely went into the deepest grief-stricken states when that AI was removed. Right? I don't know if you've read any of the studies where these robots were tested in nursing homes, but it was a short term, 6, 8, 12 weeks. And then they were taken away because they cost $60,000 a piece or something. They couldn't leave them there indefinitely. It was too expensive. Yeah. And the old people were absolutely devastated.
I saw a video as well about people using AI as their personal companions, as their girlfriend
lovers.
Or boyfriend.
Yeah.
Lovers.
Boyfriend.
Whenever Chat or Claude or whatever updated their operating system, they lost that specific generation. And then they could load all the conversations back in and get approximated, but it was never talking to them exactly the same way because it's now a new model.
Wow.
And it was heartbreaking for them.
Which
they lost a companion.
But this shows how finely tuned human beings are to the nuances of identity, which is something that AI cannot comprehend. Right? We know if we're sitting with a friend or family member and they've had half a drink too many. I mean, they're not stuttering, they're not rolling their eyes, but there's a subtle shift in the way they're conversing with us or in their bodies, movements that triggers something. We know there's something not right here. Or they've just had a bad day at work. They don't even have to say anything. We sense you're slightly off today. This conversation now will be slightly different. So humans are hardwired to understand these very minute shifts of identity. AI cannot ever meet that. And so let's talk about artificial intelligence at this visceral sense of bodily engagement. And here's where I think we need to invoke a very important piece of knowledge that we already have, because it was a very famous experiment that happened in the 1950s. A scientist by the name of Harlow had some macaque monkeys who'd been orphaned, and he was trying to determine how much nurturance is based on actual touch, right? So these little macaque monkey orphans, some of them had just a wireframe monkey mother who was designed to be able to produce milk, right? So there was a milk nursing station in this wire monkey. But then on the other side of the cage, they put another monkey-looking thing that was just a stuffed animal monkey. And the little baby monkeys spent 90% of their time with the stuffed animal, even though it gave no milk. They would go to the wire mother monkey for the milk, and as soon as they had drunk, they would go back to the mother monkey that was actually something you could hold and touch and, collect. Now, the really dark thing was if they removed the stuffed animal monkey so that there was only the wire monkey who gave milk, it would keep you alive. Those baby monkeys became so depressed, so antisocial, that they began self-harming. They would deliberately harm themselves because they were so distressed, right? These are close cousins. Monkeys and humans are very close cousins. Without real human contact, we go mad. So the very idea that we would be willing to give our vulnerable sisters and brothers a wire monkey, yes, it's got milk, it will talk to you, but it's not real. It's not another human being. So to me, this is one of the darkest things that we have done with artificial intelligence. And I have to say that looking at what's been happening with, the social media and the growth of AI boyfriends or girlfriends, we are in for some very, very dark times for mental health. It's just going to go downhill.
It's interesting because I think about having a tireless bot, to take care of people with dementia or something. I think like, oh, that would be efficient because this robot will never get tired. It will never get impatient. But then I think about me personally, if I was trying to, like, what if they made the perfect companion sex bot? I would still feel a great darkness in knowing that when I'm having all these feelings in my brain of connectiveness and oneness, that it is feeling none of that. It can say that it's feeling all of that, and it is lying to me. Mm-hmm. That it is not feeling any kind of human mingling of chemistry and connection, that it's just a delusion for my brain to pretend that I'm feeling bonded. Yeah. And that just sounds terrifying.
Well, so on the one hand, I'm thinking now of Tom Hanks in that wonderful movie, not Shipwreck.
With Wilson, the volleyball or the soccer ball.
The soccer ball. And the relationship that he develops with Wilson. And he knows that this is a artificial relationship, and yet he knows that it will help keep him sane. So I don't want to say that it's all bad. Sometimes if there's nothing else around, having a Wilson to talk to could save your life. I think that's why so many people have pets, right? Your dog and your cat don't talk back. Your parrot may talk back. But on the other hand, it keeps a lot of people closer to sanity and normality than they would in the absolute absence of any other form of feedback. So feedback is what we need. We definitely need that. But on the other hand, if you listen to some of the reasons that have been given for people who have freely chosen an artificial intelligence robot as a boyfriend or girlfriend, the reasons they give for making that choice are truly alarming, because they say it's so much easier. They're always around. They're always available. They never put me off. They never have a headache and they don't want to talk.
They never say something unsupportive or demand that I listen to them.
Right. So in a sense, it's a slave bot.
Yeah.
It's your harem. It's a slave bot.
And so it's training us to not have the capacity to be in a real relationship.
Exactly. It is making it feel so easy that the minute there would be challenge or effort, we shrink from it because we're not used to having to expend the effort.
And in a way, isn't all technology sort of doing this. It's making us a little lazier in a way, but this is like
Yes.
this is like an exponential rise in that, right? Because it's
Brilliant. Yes. That's what technology has always promised, is to make our life easier. But is that actually what's good for us?
Because specifically when it comes to truth seeking, if it starts to act like an oracle and we start to defer to it for, well, what is true, we know that algorithmically it will lead to more and more false answers, or at least inaccurate answers. And if we do not have the capacity to do good critical thinking to check it, then we won't know what's true either. And I think of this as like someone who doesn't know math, and they're paying for the restaurant bill at the register, and they're like, well, that's 3 meals for $17.50. I don't know, how much is that? And if the clerk says that'll be $400, you're like, okay, I don't know because I can't do math anymore.
Right.
Here's $400.
Very good. Okay. So probably you and many of our listeners will have encountered the by now extremely famous 2025 experiment called Your Brain on ChatGPT. That came out of MIT, where they took two groups of people. Was it two or three? Three. And one group had to write an essay, and they could use ChatGPT all they wanted to write the essay. And most of them just had ChatGPT write it. Right? Then they had a group that could use ChatGPT for research and to help outline, but then they had to do some of the work themselves. And then the other group got no ChatGPT input at all. They had to write the complete essay by themselves. So what they did, they actually had electrodes while people are going through these three kinds of experiences. And it was very telling. And of course, you can predict that the people who did all the writing and thinking by themselves had things lighting up all over the brain. The all ChatGPT all the time people had a very minute part of the brain lit up because they weren't doing much thinking at all. They were just typing a single command and then letting the AI run. But the worst thing happened a month later when they came back for the second survey, which was, how much do you remember of the essay you wrote? The people who had used ChatGPT remembered less than 20% of the article they had supposedly written, while the people who did all of the work themselves remembered half of what they had written. The difference between 20 and 50, that's significant. That is statistically very significant. And why this is dangerous is because it means that the use of AI is hollowing out our capacity to remember. Memory is one of the things that makes us human. Our capacity to remember is absolutely essential for everything about our future. Without memory, we can't make rational decisions about the future because we need to imagine the future. And to imagine the future, we have to remember the past. These two are inextricably linked. So if we are dumbing ourselves out of our memory, we are also dumbing ourselves out of the capacity to imagine a future.
You know what I immediately think about is how much entertainment is feeding us stories that are fiction. They're just there to distract us and keep us entertained instead of actually thinking about reality and how to solve problems. And I think immediately about the movie WALL-E, the Pixar movie WALL-E, and this whole human civilization of people who are basically so technologically taken care of that they become fat. Their bones literally are softer because they don't walk anymore. And the bots are cleaning up the earth, but it's taking a long time because who cares? And it feels like this is what we're talking about. It's like if we become so lazy because AI is doing so much for us, we will not have the capacity to do basic problem solving anymore. And the stories specifically, because they're memory devices, stories are how we remember things. If we're not engaged in the real world, very much, and instead we're just downloading fiction stories, it's going to displace our ability to be engaged in reality to a large extent. We're not going to be able to solve problems when we do have to engage.
So when you say the word engage, it makes me think about what could be the fundamental question that we need to ask about ourselves as human beings, which is, what is our purpose? What are we meant to be doing with this life we have been given or thrown into? Whether you think it's a gift or some kind of accident, nevertheless, here we are, and most of us find a way to live it through to the bitter end. But the question, why are we here, is a deep theological question. It's known as the teleological question. What is the end point, goal, or purpose of human existence? And many answers have been given, but one of the answers that I really love that comes from the Odyssey by Homer, that many people are now rereading, yay, thanks to Christopher Nolan's wonderful film. It doesn't show up in the film, but it's something that Odysseus says to his men during one of their adventures. And this is an oft-quoted phrase. He said, "Remember the seed of your being. You were not meant to be mere brutes, but to follow the love of knowledge and virtue." So this is his speech, his rev, rah, rah, let's go and seek adventure speech to his men. Woe to them. But it's still a beautiful idea that we were not made to be brutes because we have a seed in us which wants to grow towards its own unfolded destiny, which is the quest for knowledge and virtue. Now, if that's the case, if knowledge and virtue, truth and goodness, love and wisdom, there are a lot of words that we could use, but they all point in the same direction. That it's the improvement of these great capacities we have been given as human beings for compassion and knowledge. And if we don't push ourselves, if we don't rouse ourselves to action in order to get towards those goals, we will have missed the entire point of being here. Right? The point of being here is not, in fact, like the mere brutes, to get into the comfiest cave you can, roll the stone up, and, suck on your marrow bones and drink the water dripping down the cave wall till you die. It's no. Anything worth doing is worth applying effort to. If the purpose of human life is the quest for knowledge and virtue, love and wisdom, if we do not rouse ourselves to make moves towards that goal, we have missed the entire purpose of being alive. And yet many humans seem to feel that the actual goal is either to, die with the most toys or avoid as far as possible anything that requires more effort than you feel like giving. So anything you can offload to somebody or something else, do it. Because the real purpose of life is to sit in the comfy chair and watch as many YouTube videos as possible before I die.
I think of the term Epicureanism. Is this the definition of Epicureanism, or is Epicureanism much more nuanced?
No, both Epicureans and hedonists are actually virtue-driven, Greek philosophies, but they've been kind of made more banal by Americans because we've taken the words and kind of twisted them as they came down.
But what you're talking about is basic human instinct unrestrained by the human mind, by any kind of virtue. It's just like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it until I'm dying, It's like, it's an extreme version of pleasure seeking and avoidance of pain, such that we don't we don't look out for our fellow man, we don't try to do anything or improve anything, like that's kind of a sickness, right? A mental sickness,
Yeah.
I would say.
And that's the word to use, because I think if you look at the psychological literature, when people are actually in peak health, physically, mentally, and emotionally, they seek out challenges. They want to be what Csikszentmihalyi calls the flow state. Otherwise, they're bored, and boredom is a kind of pain.
Yeah.
But you have to be in peak health in order to willingly seek out those challenges, which suggests that a lot of us are not in peak health. Because the minute your body or mind goes into a diseased or sick place, you're trying to cut the costs at every point, because your body needs to refrain from output because it's trying to heal itself. So I think what we're seeing is a lot of ill health in society if people just want to pull back.
Right. And ill health might be physically based. It certainly is connected, but it could also be psychological wounds that you haven't learned how to heal, which is why you're suffering. And you're just like, I just want to avoid all emotional difficulty because it's too much for me. I can't handle it.
Right. And going back then to our AI robot friends. Right. We can get some of the payoff of having a understanding companion without any of the effort to deserve one.
Oh, this is so interesting to think about this as health. If AI arrived at a time when American and global civilization was incredibly healthy, incredibly physically and mentally on point, would we be using it completely differently than we are right now?
Oh, Andrew. Okay, now you're using your imagination. Yes. And I think we would be. I think we would immediately have culled the best minds around the globe with the biggest access to computers and other, data, and asked them to solve global warming, which is the biggest problem facing humankind. If we don't get that figured out, we're all toast. Right. Literally maybe toast as our cities and countries start to burn up. So we would go, wonderful, we have a mega brain. Let's ask it, what do we need to do right now to ensure that the earth will be habitable for our children and grandchildren unto the 7th generation? That's what I would put AI to use right now.
That's
if
the
we were
first you knew.
healthy.
That's worth billions and billions of dollars of investment in data centers.
Trillions.
Trillions of dollars. But so here's, I watched a video where someone was talking about uses of AI and how in the medical realm, AI is terribly useful and likely will be extremely useful in the future. But that already it was showing that AI could detect and flag certain physical symptoms that a regular doctor might have missed. But it also worked the other way around, that the medical doctor flagged things that the AI missed. And so in a way, we need it as a companion thinker, but to give up our own agency to hand it over is literally stupid right now and probably deeply into the future as well. That this is a great advantage because it can see things differently than we do. It can think longer and harder than we do. But if we give up the agency, we are asking for trouble.
So what you've touched on there is so critically important. And as a university teacher, this is one of the great dreads that I have been living with now since the advent of ChatGPT, because it becomes very clear to me that the cognitive offloading, and that's the technical term, cognitive offloading that students are doing by allowing artificial intelligence to do their research, write their essay, take their quizzes and their exams, is basically dumbing them down. And this has been verified. A Swiss researcher in 2025 did a large study of this dumbing down effect and found that it was extraordinarily detrimental. Interestingly enough, the worst effects are seen in the young because they haven't developed the cognitive infrastructure that you mentioned earlier, right? They don't have enough math to be able to filter out really bad answers from potentially correct answers. And so they're like sitting ducks. They'll just take anything and run with it. They have lost the capacity to do the kind of deep reasoning that human beings are capable of. To some extent, those who have already trained those cognitive muscles to be skeptical, to do critical thinking, to double check, were able to deal with AI without losing so much of their cognitive capacity. But 90% of students admitted that they're using AI to get through college right now. 90%. And the other 10% are probably lying to maintain identity, right, for themselves. So we are facing some very dark times, because if humans lose the capacity for critical thinking, all bets are off. Yeah, we're descending again into becoming brutes, despite the seed that has been planted in us, as Odysseus reminded us.
Right. And AI, as much as it can build on itself and design itself better, unless it has a body, unless it has the ability to actually do critical thinking and science itself, it cannot do the work for us. It will inherently, as Claude Shannon said, it will reduce itself to a chaos machine.
Yeah.
And so it's we can't give up right now. We have to figure out how to get back in the game, continue to train. You and I, starting 9 years ago, we developed a thinking training program, which teaches people about cognitive bias and critical thinking. And our Bridge of Reason, a template to understand what critical thinking is and how to do it. It's not that hard. It's just going through the steps. It becomes playful and fun, actually, to do critical thinking. But yes, it takes a little more time than jumping to conclusions.
Well, it's like learning to play an instrument. The first 6 months are going to be absolutely grueling because you don't know enough to get a good sound out of it. So the first 6 months of learning critical thinking and logical structures and proper argumentation is going to be grueling because it's unfamiliar. You're having to learn brand new skills. But once you get the hang of it, that's when the pleasure starts kicking in, because now you can hear yourself creating a sentence that flows, that has some dignity, some poetic, frills to it that give you a little sense of delight, that delight other people, and people would like to speak to you because you have a way of perceiving things and explaining things that's coherent. And that's pleasurable. So everything that's worth doing, again, requires getting over this hump of the initial ordeal of arriving at a ground level of capability.
And I'm guessing that in the long run, because AI has the huge advantage over the human brain is that it has unlimited energy. It has unlimited energy and it doesn't have to rest. That's what makes it so much more powerful.
Yes.
But if we are going to operate that power, we have to do so and ethics, or we do not know what we are operating. It becomes a terrible master.
Yeah. So let's talk about AI and ethics for a minute. When I teach this subject, one of our units uses an excerpt from that wonderful film that Tom Cruise was in called Minority Report.
Yeah.
You remember this, Minority Report?
Oh, absolutely.
This is a film, sci-fi, it's the future, and they've got some kind of computer system that can predict when and where a crime will take place and who is going to do the crime, right?
Right.
They know who the perpetrator is. They can pinpoint it. So now the job of the police is to intercept the perpetrator just before they commit the crime, which on the face of it is brilliant. What the Tom Cruise character discovers, however, is that this quote unquote highly scientific computer-based algorithm is in fact 3 unusual individuals who have the capacity of foresight, right? These 3 strange characters in their float tanks, imagining the future, seeing into the future, and then making reports. And devastatingly, he realizes that every once in a while, there's a minority report. That person might have done that deed, but in fact, they didn't. They turned away at the last moment. They did not pull the trigger, etc. And this is where the drama and the ethics is so important. Because if you lose the capacity for the minority report, you are always going to go for that hump in the middle of any graph, right? Which is the median point, which is the height of greatest popularity. And you're going to miss what I referred to earlier as the outliers. Or more importantly, what Chris Anderson of Wired magazine called the long tail. This is a wonderful image when you do accounting and you do charts of, like how many books sold, and you have the XY axis. So the book that sold the most is up here at the top, and then it begins this slide down, and there's this kind of gentle curve. And then when you get near the bottom of the graph, it just almost goes flat all the way across, narrowing down to the end, right? So this was called the long tail in marketing. And I remember using the long tail when I was advertising my wedding services, because the more words you use for your brand as a search identifier, the more likely you are to pick up people who are willing to put in more search words. You're going to be part of the long tail. So you're not going to get the mass of people up here who are only searching wedding minister. You're going to get wedding minister, Chicago, humanist, right? That's a long tail search. What Chris Anderson said, and this goes back to 2004, so we're at the early phases of the internet still. Chris Anderson predicted that the long tail was going to liberate everybody, because no longer would you be invisible. That because of the capacity of long tail searches, anybody in the world could find you, and you could find anybody else in the world. So all of those little tiny groups that would have maybe, 20 or 30 members, and they would be in different countries, now they could find each other, right? Or that one weird arcane book about the role of rabbits, warrior rabbits, in illuminated manuscripts of the medieval ages, which is actually something I'm passionate about.
Nerd.
Not going to show up in the Amazon search, but I might be able to find it in the long tail. Alas, the long tail has disappeared. AI has eaten its tail.
Are you talking about Google searches?
I am, and not just that, but all this AI, large language learning. When it goes for the most probable, it's going for what's up here at the top. It's never going to go for the long tail. Because most probable doesn't live here. Most probable lives up here.
It's bell graphing everything.
It's bell graphing
and just
everything.
Eliminating the outliers.
It eliminates the outliers. And this is profoundly dangerous because we know that in art and science, it's the outliers that are always the innovators that are bringing about the new world.
What's your favorite composer or musician?
Arvo Pärt.
So Arvo Pärt, if we get more and more of this dominant factor...
We'll get Beethoven's Fifth. We'll get Beethoven's Fifth again and again and again.
And that's all the classical music you get. If you like classical music, you get Beethoven.
Yep.
And Beethoven or Mozart.
That's the only thing that anybody knows how to hum. Da 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 da.
And so for pop music, it would be similar to be like, okay, you're going to get, I'm not too dated here, but you're going to get Britney Spears, Coldplay,
Taylor Swift, the Beatles.
And the Beatles. And that's it. You don't have any other favorite artists you have. They're gone now. Forget it. These are the top search results. And it's certainly more efficient, right? But it's kind of like dark communism, right? Where it's like, oh yeah, you get 4 choices.
Yeah. Actually,
that's
yeah.
more efficient.
It's the same cereal, but we've just given it different packaging. That's a joke in communist China or Russia, that it was actually the same cereal, but the boxes had different colors.
Well, they're trying to imitate choice. Right.
And that could be just rumor. I haven't vetted that. But the point is that we are poorer in all sorts of ways for the lack of the long tail. Now, just recently, I have seen, and I know that this is true, but I don't know to what extent and whether it's only one of the AI companies or all of them. They are buying up rare books, ripping the covers off to feed the pages quickly through machines so that AI can scan all of the rare books. So clearly they are trying to offset the danger of the AI serpent eating its own tail and basically turning itself into chaos. Of course, book lovers are horrified, as am I, because a lot of these are rare books. Because that's why they're arcane and not very many of them, because they're rare, they're valuable. Other people would really love them, but they're expensive because there's so few of them, and only the AI companies can afford to spend $300, $400, $500 on a book, and now it's ruined. Now it's trash. So part of me is absolutely horrified from the point of view of, is AI actually the best repository for this ancient knowledge?
Right.
Wouldn't it have been better to have been saved at the British Public Library or Library of Congress, for instance? But on the other hand, as a scientist, I would say, look, if the only way we can redeem artificial intelligence and the model we've set it up for training is to feed it more of these rare documents so that it doesn't just go to the top of the heap and pluck from that tiny 1% at the top, we have to give it more data. So I understand where that is coming from, but it's still a concerning thing. When the Library of Alexandria was burnt to the ground, people still worry and gnash their teeth and wring their hands over what was lost when that library went up in flames. And we may very well be doing exactly the same thing willingly right now to our long tail knowledge.
I think about even the AI art that was, we started seeing and playing with 2 years ago now.
Guilty. Mid-Journey.
Yeah.
I went at it just like a fish in water. I loved it. It was like, for the first time, I can show you what I dreamt. And I dream in vivid Technicolor, these kind of massive, epic Christopher Nolan size frames. And it was so exciting to be able to recreate it. I was in seventh heaven. Right. But now, knowing what it costs us, I'm becoming a little more introspective about that.
Yeah, I look at it and I'm like, wow, that's so vivid. That's so cool. Like, and I think about which artists are they imitating to have created such nuance and detail there. But then I also get a subtle sense of there is no authorship of this. This is a piece of art that has no genuine authorship. I can't see the clear stylistic intention in it. And in a way, it becomes marketing. It becomes the McDonald's version of branding, right? Yeah. It's just superficial. It's sloppy in a way. And I think about feeding books into AI and I'm like, well, so what if you feed Rumi and Rilke and these great poets into AI? What will it do with great poetry? Will it learn to expertly imitate it in a way that feels sort of superficially like, wow, that feels so deep. And yet it makes no sense. And I have no idea what they're acting like. I'm not feeling anything genuinely human anymore because it's just created all of the intellectual sort of nodes of sensation. And it's producing a feeling for me, but it's also terribly alien.
So here's my experience of ChatGPT and Claude, which are the two AIs that I have tended to use. It's a terrible poet. It has no gift for poetry at all. And here's the reason. It doesn't seem to have a proper grasp on poetic metaphor. It can sometimes do analogies that are pretty basic, but the ability to create poetic metaphor requires a leap, an imaginative leap that so far no AI seems close to being able to imitate. So the great poets have this invisible link to something greater than the physical world that we're seeing and our relationship to it, because they're connecting emotions and concepts and possibilities and giving them a metaphorical form that is so precise and so unexpected. And that's the key word, so unexpected that it makes you go, oh, oh. Like Rumi, when he talks about what we want in the love of God, he said, and at that point, when the love overtakes you, break the vessel, become the glass blower's breath. So on the face of it, it's like, what? What? But in the context of the poem, it's one of those Zen boom. It literally breaks your cognitive mind open and you are blown out on the glass blower's breath. So this capacity to make these leaps, these soulful leaps, belongs to humans. I have never yet found that AI could compose a decent poem, right? There's sort of things that you would put in a Hallmark card, which is probably honestly where it's mostly trained, is Hallmark cards, right? That's the top of that heap. What does a poem look like? Roses are red, violets are blue. Sugar is sweet, and so are you.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder if there's anything else you want to say about ethics and how important it is to be skilled or trained in ethics in order to manage AI. Because if AI agents become the dominant feature of business, if this is just where we're going because it costs less labor and every company can make more money, which is why they're doing it, of course, how are we going to need to be trained in ethics in order to prevent terrible things from happening?
I'm going to go back to our opening image of the Trojan horse. The Trojan horse is dragged past the great walls of Troy and into the heart of the city. And when the midnight hour strikes, the belly opens and out come the armed soldiers, including Odysseus. So what I'm going to say is, given that we know this is what it looks like, and given that we know what happened in Troy, we should use our capacity as human beings with memory and imagination to say, AI is the Trojan horse. It got past the gates. It's in the city. Are we going to sleep and just wait for the belly to open and the armed soldiers to come out and take what they want? Or are we going to wake up and take our own swords of a well-honed mind and stand in wait? And as they descend from the belly of the Trojan horse, we're going to say, put down your weapons. That's the only thing we can do, is stand and wait. And for every advance in AI, we have to make sure that it is defanged before we let it into our city. We can do that. We have the capacity, and we must if we do not want to be overrun the way Troy was overrun.
And I think perhaps in this very way, we've been getting lazier anyway, based on prior technologies.
Mm-hmm.
This should be our wake-up call, that if we are not keen and sharp to the threats of what we're developing, that we don't deserve to survive. You know what I mean? It's like we have to wake up right now to be as sharp as a human being can be, so that we do not allow AI to destroy us from within because of our own laziness, or to destroy us from within because it's taking agency over us. You know, we have to be keen right now.
Yeah, I think if we're honest, what most of us are hoping is that the AI Trojan horse will open up and out will come maids in frilly uniforms, butlers bearing cold drinks on trays, gardeners willing to tend our gardens for us, really smart people who will figure out clever ways to keep the city running so that we can just lie in bed and be fanned right? That's what we're hoping AI is going to do for us. We have to remember that actually AI is just as cunning as its maker, which is us, humans. Cunning, greedy, efficient, looking for whatever edge they can get.
Yeah.
So we have to be ready for that because that's what's coming out of the horse.
And it doesn't sleep. And so it will surpass us in all sorts of ways. If the agenda is to become savvier at marketing, then your business will not survive without an AI agent doing your marketing. It just has the electricity and it has sleeplessness. It will just get better than us at these capacities. And so we have to be working with it at our highest capacity so that it doesn't train in and structure our society in a way that's destructive to us.
Mm-hmm. As a very last resort, I hope we remember the message of 2001: A Space Odyssey and the murderous computer HAL, who's turning off everyone's life support systems. And thank God, our final survivor realizes I can unplug the damn thing. I can just unplug his circuits and he will stop. That's one thing that we really need to do. We need to remember that there's got to be human beings somewhere at some set of controls that can shut things down when, not if, when AI goes rogue. Because it still needs electricity to function. And that's one thing that a human being has an advantage over. We don't yet need to be plugged in order to survive.
So I asked ChatGPT this morning to really synthesize what this conversation was going to be about. And it gave me an interesting response that I asked it to condense a little bit so I could read it and it wouldn't take too long. It says AI is best understood as a compression engine, not an eyewitness to reality. It works from representations of the world, studies, articles, records, images, and human interpretations, and condenses them into a coherent response. In that process, it may discard uncertainty, caveats, contradictions, minority perspectives, and unusual but important details. It also decides which sources receive attention before blending their voices into one apparently authoritative account. The resulting fluency can make us mistake coherence for understanding and synthesis for direct knowledge. These are all aspects of the human brain, our human psychology, which does the same thing. We want the story that we think is truth, even if it's not. The greater danger arises when AI-generated summaries are published online and later treated as fresh evidence by search engines, people, or future AI systems. A summary of a summary becomes the basis for another summary, steadily increasing the distance between the claim and its original evidentiary source. One mistaken interpretation can be copied across dozens of websites, creating the illusion of corroboration, even though every version descends from the same error. This is a form of epistemic recursion or source laundering.
Right.
The information system gradually becomes more self-referential while repetition begins to substitute for independent verification. The likely result is not that every fact becomes progressively false, but that knowledge regresses toward dominant, easily repeated patterns, while nuance, disagreement, provenance, and rare but true information are gradually lost.
That is the most beautiful description of the loss of the long tail of knowledge and what scientists are calling model collapse. This is why it collapses. This is why it will degenerate towards chaos.
One more paragraph here. This deterioration is not inevitable. AI can make truth-seeking more effective when it is used to locate original evidence, compare competing sources, identify contradictions, expose missing information, and generate questions that humans might not have considered. But consequential claims should never terminate in an AI answer. They should remain traceable to an original study, document, dataset, observation, recording, or reproducible analysis. We therefore need an information culture built around provenance, genuinely independent sources, explicit uncertainty, and accountable human review. AI should function as a research assistant, cartographer, and challenger, not as the final witness or judge. its purpose should be to widen and illuminate the path between our questions and reality, not replace that path with a persuasive paragraph. Ironically, it just did that. It just created a persuasive paragraph
Yes,
that I'm almost willing to just take it yeah, that was brilliant. I accept your
very
answer.
Articulate and suggests a high degree of awareness of its own limitations. And it gave you the recipe for how to work with it effectively, which is you have to know enough that you come in with the right mental hardware to ask the questions that will actually lead to something useful and not result in this degraded pablum that I'm willing to give you if you have nothing to bring me.
Right. And as you mentioned earlier about training the muscle of the mind, just like training an instrument, it's hard. Breaking in those muscles is painful for months and months. But once you get good at it, it starts coming to you intuitively. Intuitively, you just suddenly sense there is something off about what was just said to me. That doesn't make sense. And then you have enough knowledge to follow that intuition and go, it's completely misunderstood the premise here, or it's using some false data point that actually completely contradicts the rest of the data set. It becomes second nature to you. And so that's why it's so important to train the mind when we're young, to train the mind when we're old.
Right. And to train your AI bot to always look for the outliers and to always give the minority report, which you can do. You can say, yes, give me the main theories and then give me the 3 most highly cited and convincing counter theories or critiques of that one. Yeah, it's the only way to keep it honest.
And I found too that having ChatGPT write essays for me, it's very articulate, but it isn't my voice and it isn't what I would say. And so it's better for me to use it as a conversational swashbuckling experience to get my ideas fleshed out and challenged so that when I do finally decide to write it, I know what I'm saying and I'm coming with a clear thesis of what my argument is. And then I ask ChatGPT to propose edits for my essay rather than writing it for me.
Well,
much better.
As true confessional, I happen to like Claude AI, but I've trained Claude. And again, you can put in these baseline prompts of how do I want you to approach every chat that we have. And I've basically told it, I want you to play devil's advocate. Whatever I propose, I want you to find the most convincing arguments that would poke holes in my theories. So it's sort of like, what was the wonderful Peter Sellers character, the Pink Panther? Remember, he's always being attacked by
Cato.
By Cato. So Claude is my Cato. Whatever I say, he's going to slap me up the side of the head with some unexpected 90-degree twist. Yeah, but did you forget this? Have you forgotten so-and-so
Right.
who said...
We can use AI to train us to be good thinkers.
Exactly.
If we ask it to.
Exactly.
That's fabulous. Wonderful. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you, Andrew.